Welcome to the Not So Average Jane podcast. Here, we celebrate the remarkable odysseys of female combat veterans, amplify their voices, and honor their courage.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Not So Average Jane podcast. Today I have a special guest of whom I have known for a very long time. We won't go into exactly how long. I'll let you do some math on your own, but she's an OG battle buddy. I've known her since basic training. Brooke Brittain has joined me to share her story. Thank you, Brooke. I still want to call you Brittain because you've
You can
been
call me
Brittain.
Brittain. Yeah, let's do it.
All these years. This is Brooke. You're a civilian now, correct?
Yeah.
Officially, but you made a career of it in the military, and I got the hell out after 6 years. So you're much more brave than I am. But thank you so much. We have stayed in contact on some level over all these years, and it's been awesome to share that growth, that becoming an actual adult and doing adult things. And even though it's been from afar, do you remember running into each other during our deployment, our first deployment?
Yes, I can't remember where, but I do.
Yeah, it's very, very vague for me too. So we went to basic and AIT together, ran into each other in 2003 in Iraq, but haven't physically seen each other since then. Jeez, Louisa.
It might have been in Nasiriyah. It might have been at Tikrit Air Base. I could be making that up, but
I will just go with whatever you say because I can't remember for the life of me. And I didn't write about it in the journal either, which is crazy to me that I figure I would have been excited to be like, oh, I ran into Brittain. But anyway, I typically start the podcast with, and I don't know this story about you, on your enlistment story. I do know that actually, I don't know. Did you enlist prior to 9/11?
yes.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. Like me, Brooke enlisted prior to 9/11. We didn't exactly know what we were signing up for, or what we were going to be a part of, but soon became part of a war-driven military. Now, most of the women that I talked to that joined post 9/11 had some type of motivation to serve their country based on the terrorist acts. But with me, it was different. And with you, it must have been very different as well.
Yeah. So I was kind of a nerd growing up, and I loved GI Joes, and I was obsessed with the military. I'd go into the library and grab out the military books, and that would be what I would want to check out. And I just always had a fascination with military equipment, military things. But I also love basketball. Currently I'm a head basketball coach and athletic coordinator. So that's always been part of my journey as well. So my senior year of high school, I kept saying, okay, if I play college basketball, I won't join the military yet. And so my freshman year of college, I got recruited and I played on scholarship, but it was a half scholarship at a private school. And when you start looking at paying for college, even though I had a $20,000 scholarship, I was still taking out $20,000 in loans. And I did always want to join the military. So after my freshman year, I started thinking like, maybe I'll just go reserves and then I can help pay for my college. I can join the military, which I always wanted to do. And then I can go back and play college basketball. So I never looked at active duty in my entire life, even though I loved it. And I went straight into the reserve recruiter's office and I tried to kind of make it all work with the intention of always going back to that school. So I played basketball at Sterling College in Kansas. And then after I enlisted and then 9/11 happened, it was a whole new ball game. And kind of like your story, I enlisted in July 2nd, 2001. And so I heard your story like a month after you or so. So when I went into the
July 15.
They tried to get me to do some other job. I only wanted to be military police. I didn't want to be behind a desk. I wanted to go be as close to combat as possible for a female at that time. And at the time we couldn't do combat arms. So military police was, we couldn't do combat arms. So I'm like, what is the closest thing to combat arms? And as you know, we were in a combat support unit and we were right there on the front lines. And so that was the one that drew me in. But when I went in to sign, they didn't have it open. They didn't have anything open. I wanted to leave in August, September, October, and they didn't have anything until I think the start date of the OSIT that we were in was actually like February or something. And so January. Okay.
The end of January.
Okay. So I went back to school just for a semester just to keep getting credits, but I didn't go back to Sterling College because I was knowing that I was leaving a semester. So I just went to UTA, got some credits a little cheaper, and then Met Dallas Rain Ryan. That's what sticks in my head. Because I'm from DFW, you guys. Anybody listening, Dallas, and I'm from Dallas area, always stuck in my mind. And
Oh
I
my
can't,
gosh.
Dallas night doesn't click. I'm like, nope, that's Ryan.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I've got some old school friends that still, yeah.
You're the only middle name I know, and it's probably only because it's Dallas Rain. Like Dallas Rain, like it's raining in Dallas. Just
I'm like, wait, you still know, like, it's crazy. It's interesting the conversations you have in downtime in basic
yeah.
and PT, and apparently that came up, and apparently Brooke has remembered it all this time.
I can't remember anything, including like
But you
37
know
names
my
I
full
met
name.
today.
Yeah, and maybe you know the last four of my social too, because
My
we
battle
were
buddy from Iraq knows my full social security number. She can
really
rattle it off. I'm like, this is dangerous.
not really. I feel like the whole universe has all of our socials at this
For
point
sure.
in time. And wow. So why military police? That was
I
something you
also
pursued. It wasn't put in front of you by a recruiter.
No, the funny part, I think I missed part of that story. They didn't have it open. And so I had to do delayed entry. But
Yeah.
that's the only reason I did delayed entry. They were trying to give me like 37 different jobs that were nothing to do, nothing close to that. And so I was like, I was willing to walk out. I'm like, I'll just leave. And I know now that as a 42-year-old who's retired, I know that they were so full of it in MEPS. The
Oh,
guy
yeah.
pretended to call the Pentagon to make sure that he could get me a slot in MP school. And I was like, I've got to sit through this and
Oh,
sign
recruiters are
today.
so dirty,
They
man.
did me
So
so, you know
dirty.
what though? I appreciate it now that I didn't leave and then go join the Marines or something. Like it was part of my story, but he was ready to not let me leave without signing. And so he called the
Trying to fill his
Pentagon.
quota.
Oh, and I left and I was telling everybody, yeah, they called the Pentagon to let me get into MP school.
So you didn't pick that until after 9/11 then? That was your motivation.
No, I did pick it in July of
Oh,
2009.
wow.
I really
Wow.
wanted to be an MP.
See, I kind of was opposite. I didn't really know what I wanted to be, but I think they needed people in the MP slots, which is contradictory to what you're telling me
Yeah.
because we listed right around the same time and probably went to MEPS right around the same time.
He was probably just trying to get me to leave that month because I was
Yeah.
ready to leave that month, but I didn't
Right.
have the jobs that.
Oh, yeah. So the MP slot was yeah, because obviously I was delayed entry as well.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But my motivation was I wanted to go and work for the DEA, but I knew that you had to have real world experience and you needed a bachelor's degree. So like that was kind of similar to you. Okay, it'll help me pay for college and I'm going to get my real world experience. I just didn't know how real world of an experience
Yeah.
I was going to get. And the recruiter, still remember his name, will never forget it, was pushed me into the MP position and waived an $8,000 signing bonus in front of my face.
Oh, I did get a signing bonus too.
Yeah.
That was nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would
Well,
have done it.
he probably made it feel like, oh, well, I could maybe pull some strings and get
Yeah.
you, 8K, but really, guys, recruiters are dirty. They are the used car salesman.
I got played. I know I got played. Actually, my recruiter was good. That was the actual MEPS, like the Army recruiter at MEPS. But my recruiter, I don't remember his name. I remember your middle name, but I don't remember my recruiter's name. How weird is that?
Yeah, mine was Sergeant Tiedemann. If you're out there, Sergeant Tiedemann, who you're probably not a sergeant anymore, Mr. Tiedemann. Yeah, I still remember you. All right. So yeah, you went off to basic training end of January. And I mean, I kind of know this part of the story, but I mean, share with me some things from your perspective of basic and AIT, good, bad, or indifferent.
I still laugh at myself when I first got there because I wanted to go home so bad. That's not like me. Looking at you remember how much I loved it? I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember you hating it.
I had a blast. Like basic training was such a good time for me. I felt like you guys were hilarious. I love military stuff. But that first week and like yelling and like in line, I'm like, I don't think this is for me. But I tried to find an excuse that like this was real. My grandma passed away when I was in basic training, but she was kind of struggling at the end of her life right before I left. I lived like 2 hours from her. It's not like I lived with my grandma and I needed to stay home, but I was like playing through my head, like, how do I get out of here? And I'm just so thankful. I was so scared of the drill sergeants at what's the place where you go when you start? What's it called? Not before we go to our unit, but they're like giving you like the very first week or so. Reception. Yeah, I was so
like
scared of the drill sergeants at reception that I was scared to go tell our drill sergeant that I wanted to go home so bad.
It was during reception, so it happened almost immediately.
Yeah, I just wanted to go home. And then when I got into the unit and we were all kind of doing it together, I was good to go the rest of the time.
Yeah. I just remember thinking like, because it was not long before basic training that Saving Private Ryan came out. Some other effers are going to freaking hear me knowing because I was Private Ryan. And I'm like, but not one time, not one drill sergeant ever, the entire time, ever referred. Maybe they just didn't see the movie. I don't know.
Maybe.
They're busy, but never anything. And I just remember thinking, okay, I just need to fly under the radar, do enough that, no one's mad at you because you're not doing well, but don't do too much because you don't want to bring attention on you.
Yeah.
Because then if you do jack, it's like, I just wanted to fly under the radar.
Same.
Oh, sorry.
Right. But do you remember our senior drill sergeant?
Yeah.
I love some of your memories.
Was she not the scariest woman you've ever met in your life?
Yeah.
I don't know if this is appropriate for the podcast, but
no, talk about it. It's all appropriate.
Anytime somebody would say, "Coming, drill sergeant," she'd go, "Ain't nobody gonna be coming around here."
And to give you all some context, okay?
I'm
We were talking, I'm probably over exaggerating a little bit, but we're talking about 18-year-old version of Dallas off into a new space in Fort Lost in the Woods, Missouri, okay? This woman was probably at least 6 foot, Samoan, just like ready to just slit throats, okay?
Yeah.
Just stalked with muscle, and she had a deeper tone in her voice. And I've never been more scared of a woman in my life. Like she would just, her presence, right? She would walk into a room and you stood up, you like sat up a little straighter. And this wasn't just women, like the men that we were there with equally as intimidated by this woman.
Yeah.
Do you remember her name?
Senior drill sergeant. If you weren't asking. See,
Well,
how do I remember your middle name? I don't remember our senior drill sergeant.
I don't know, but if you think of it, let me know. I would love to find her and bring
yeah.
her ass on here because they all went. I mean, they couldn't, as soon as they left, I guarantee they all deployed. I mean, just about every MP in the United States.
I ran into Drill Sergeant Harris.
Oh, I love that guy.
He was a major. He went officer.
Really?
I ran into him in 2009. My second deployment.
And then you remember Drill Sergeant Matthews. What was the really quirky, smart assy, tall, white guy? Ran sick in him, always freaking like short, which he was not short. Yep.
Yeah. That was
funny, but then you'd laugh at him and then you get your ass reamed.
Yeah, he was going third turd. And I started laughing. He's like, "What are you doing? Just pushed, you turd." I'm like, well, I'm not even a third platoon.
No. I know. Yeah. So see, it was a lot of fun.
I had a blast. But you guys were fun. We had good people.
We did. Do you remember, this is like turning into no, it's fine. We'll get to all the other stuff. This is fun. Do you remember when someone, and maybe it was more traumatizing to me, but someone brought candy into the barracks and they ripped, they found it in one of the wall lockers or something, and they marched us to the hill, but it was only us females?
No.
Oh my gosh. So we went, so there was this hill, and I just remember because they were like, I mean, we basically had to do physical training, PT, until the woman who brought the candy bar into the barracks puked. And I remember they were like, "Okay, now roll." And I'm like, "What do you mean roll?" Like we had to roll up the hill.
Yeah.
Air crawls and rolls and all the thing, lunges up and down the hill. And I was just like, this bitch better puke soon.
I don't remember who it was.
I don't remember who it was either. But I just know that I was like, better not have been my battle buddy in my room because I'll swear.
Yeah.
So
my horror for me in basic training, the only I say horror, was walking down the hall, when everybody's stuff had been dumped, you got mattresses or whatever, you've got everything, all your socks unrolled and thrown out the hallway if somebody forgot to lock their locker. I came back one day and I'm seeing everybody's stuff and I knew I locked my locker and I'm like, oh man, who is this poor soul? And then I see my name tag on the ground and it was that black and white little Brittian. And I go to my locker and it was locked, but you know how you shut both doors and then you had to, and I didn't get it secured. And then I locked my locker and ran out the door and my stuff was everywhere.
Yeah. again, those, I like to try and bring a little bit more context because we do have listeners who have never been in the military and they come and they to kind of scope it out. So they would do checks. And now, as you know, a grown woman and a mother, even, I look back and I'm like, okay, I understand. I see the lesson. As an 18-year-old kid, I was just like, why do they do this? But it was all about keeping your stuff secure. And we went off to combat and whatnot. It was imperative that you kept your equipment secure and weren't irresponsible with your things. So it's just, you know, a very dramatized way of making sure they just, you know, sink it into your head. But I never had my wall locker tossed, did have the room tossed, the, you know, the mattress and the sheets and the boots and all the things. And guys, like when they do this, they just throw everything everywhere. And some of us were in like 2-person rooms. Some of us were in like 4-person rooms. Some of us were 8-person rooms. And they like, I think they made it a point to like take one end of the hall and move it down to the other end of the hall and empty it out over there and vice versa. And I mean, and then they would tell you have, you know, 3.5 minutes to fix the mess. And, you know, it's always about these impossible tasks that there's no way you can do. But weirdly enough, you find a way to do it.
Yeah. And you find a way to not tear each other's heads off while you do it. You learn how to work together through chaos.
Yeah. And we were kind of talking about that offline. And actually, it's kind of a good leeway. We were talking about how you could easily snub some of the weaker links in your platoon, in your company, in your squad, in the female barracks, whatever that may be. But in all honesty, if you do that, you're bringing everyone down. And we're talking about how, you know, sometimes you end up with, say, a battle buddy who's not as squared away as you are, or you would like them to be. And instead of being selfish in those moments, the military teaches you to help them, to put your hand down, to help build them up too, because it just strengthens the unit as a whole.
I think it develops you as a leader too when you help them. You know, I feel like I've really embraced leadership in my career, and I try to be a good leader, but I associate that really growing so much in basic training when I did have a friend that maybe had been getting ragged on because they were a weaker link for 3 or 4 days in a row, and then they walk out and they don't have their headgear on, and all of a sudden you just hand them your headgear and you take the ripping for them because you know they can't handle it that day. I remember doing that and them looking at me like, why would you do that? And I'm like, I got it. It's good. I can do some extra push-ups today. But that gave me my first sense of like, I can help other people that are struggling. Like, I'm not gonna be perfect. I told you I had my locker tossed, but there's going to be days where I need to be the person that helps somebody else. And I think that's really, you know, you start to have these things that build confidence in yourself. I think for me, basic training allowed some of those places for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I find that you probably continue that throughout your line of work and even in your personal life today.
I try to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so let's maybe get off the basic training in AIT train. We can call each other later and reminisce a little bit more. I can even pull out pictures we'll have to share. Do you have pictures from basic in AIT?
My short hair.
Oh, you had very short hair.
Yeah, because I didn't want to get in trouble for messing with it.
Sometimes I was envious of that. There were a few of you that just chopped it. And I was like, God, it would be so much easier just to chop it. Okay, one more basic training, and it might have even been an AIT story, and then we'll move on. Senior drill sergeant, we're going to try and remember her name. The only time she ever said my name, one time, that entire several-week journey, she said my name one time, and I about peed myself. Seriously. And it was in front of the entire company. We were in formation, and she said something like, Ryan, get over here. And I was like, what? I'm like, you know, you're racking through your head, like, what did I do? Like, I'm about to die. Like, she's literally going to chop my head off in front of everybody and put it on a stake. And then we're going to march through the entire fort with my head on a stake at the front of the company. Like, that's what's about to happen. And she like asked me to do an about face. So I'm facing her and have my back to the company. And she used me as an example of how my hair was. And here's the thing, I was observant. I was like, okay, senior drill sergeant sets the standard, right? So she's an E7. She's just like scary, but squared away. Like, honestly, weird, scary mentor, right? For most of us. Like, she was badass.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being badass.
No, she's badass, but intimidating, scary. Anyway, she always French braid her hair and then took the tail and tucked it up underneath. and it always looked really good. And like, well, you don't know, but you know now, put your hair in a bun and then you do a bunch of stuff and it's all frizzy and all out over the place. Anyway, I started doing my hair like her, and she called me out and used me as a good example of how us females should be trying to do our hair to keep it looking squared away and professional. And then she dismissed me, and I still almost peed my pants. Yeah, I'd love
But
to find her. Huh?
I bet that built you up inside too. Like to have this scary badass use you as an example of something that's gone well.
But also kind of scary, because then you go back to your platoon and they're like, oh, you brown nose senior.
Oh, we were just messing with you. I was over there with no hair, like you stuck.
Yeah. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword sometimes. Like, oh, you bring good attention, or the drill sergeants are all about it. And then anyway, okay. All right. So I remember some of the girls getting, because the women who went active duty, they get their first orders while we're there. And I remember a couple of them like getting South Korea and being like devastated and crying about it. But you and I both go home, because you were in the reserves, I was National Guard. And when you get home and you report to your unit, what happens?
Try to figure out life as far as a reserve unit, and there's some super sharp people and then there's some not so sharp people, and you have these E6s that you're scared of a little bit, and you're trying to figure out who do I stay away from and who do I go to. And it's a different world, because all of a sudden you go from parade rest everywhere and not talking to any NCOs to like they're just trying to chill with you sometimes, and that was unique for me, because I really respect the chain of command. I really respected sergeants, and I'm all about parade rest for each senior NCOs and stuff. So I was just kind of trying to figure it out. But then I fell into a group there were 4 females that we were really tight, and we called ourselves the Tough Guys. They're some of my best friends to this day. And so I really kind of looked to them because they'd been in the unit a little bit longer. And they were funny, but they were also like welcoming. And so I had my peers, and then I kind of looked around at the sergeants and who I wanted to be like, and then also who to stay away from. And you just like the world, you try to find your crew. And so that was my fucking MP company experience. And then we were slated to deploy, and we left. We were in the first wave in the initial invasion of Iraq in 2003. So that timeline, as you were right around there, right? I don't know what day you got there, but we were pretty fast and furious into the actual combat when I got back. So I don't remember a ton of the between. I just remember trying to figure it all out.
Did you guys go do like training before you left for Kuwait and then eventually Iraq?
Yes.
Where did you guys do training at?
Fort Hood.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had the best team leader, the best, and one of the best leaders in the entire world, not just the military, but to this day, I look up to him, and I got really lucky. He had been on a deployment. They called his unit up. He was from 366 in Oklahoma. They called them up and had them at the NSA in Maryland, or out that way. And then they deployed them. And so they split them up. So I had this East team leader, and I had an E6 squad leader, and they all kind of were, how the data rank kind of throws things off. My team leader probably could have been a platoon sergeant somewhere easily at that time, but to run a 3-man team and be as knowledgeable as he was and as respectful as he was, played college football at Oklahoma State. So he was an athlete. He was a great soldier. He was a great leader. And then I had him in my team. So he was really in my truck. But I think of that time at Fort Hood, and I'm like, who are my leaders? We're about to go to war, and so I'm trying to figure out if they're people that I respect, and am I scared? And I remember feeling like I am so lucky, like I have the best leaders in this company in my chain of command, that I'm going to be really taken care of. And I was. So it was great for me.
That's amazing. I had a really great team leader as well. And he was the kind of person who is super calm and super steady. And
as your son's speaking, my dog, Sergeant Sweet Cheeks, aka Sarge, was running back and forth.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry.
No, pausing because he's in here. I told you need to go. No, sorry.
It's okay.
We'll cut all that out.
You just see dog tail and then your son's head.
Yeah.
I'm like, great.
Yeah. So he was very calm, and just, I don't think he ever yelled, not one time ever. He was just that very neutral but confident leader. And yeah, you need that. You absolutely need that. Our squad leader was a shit show.
Yeah, happens.
So I was very thankful that our team leader was squared away. B team was also hit. The B team leader was super squared away too. And our platoon sergeant had served in the Gulf War.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, like I'm with some people who like, no, minus the squad leader, but we just did what we could. But yeah, having that leadership can make or break you. But so my timeline was we got our warning orders in January. We were in Fort Lewis, Washington in February, and we were in Iraq by May.
Okay.
Of 2003.
We were at Fort Hood in January. We landed in Kuwait on March 3rd, 2003. And we came home on March 4th, 2003. So we were literally on the border of Iraq and Kuwait on the first night of the war, watching everything get bombed. That whole night could take a whole conversation if you want it to turn that way, but really interesting timeline of the very initial invasion and kind of everything that went down. But it's called Navstar now, if you're over there, but we actually broke down the gate to the UN compound on the border of Iraq and Kuwait so that we could have showers. And we ended up like staying there for quite a while, and then we'd do missions through Safwan. But we moved 13 times during that deployment. So there was no like one spot, but I don't even know what I started rambling about, but that was kind of my timeline. We were there right at the very beginning, and we're there through Saddam being captured, and then came home not too far after.
Well, you were there like 2 months before me and probably 2 months after me.
Oh,
wow. Let's talk about that initial invasion. I mean, not a lot of people talk about it. And if they do, it's absolutely from a male's perception. I would love to give the viewpoint of a woman. On top of that, you're 19 at this point,
20.
A 20-year-old young woman, borderline a kid at this point, right? I mean, my son's oldest is going to be 20 and he's mature, but he's still a child in my opinion. And I think about us being over there. I'm like, how the hell do we did it? But a woman on the front line during the initial invasion, the first evening that we walk into or push our way through into that country. Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's hear about it.
Yeah, very unique. So I remember, I'm just going to roll through memories, but let me back it up. Right before that happened, we were at Camp Wolf in Kuwait, and we were taking all the soldiers we were doing convoy escorts to basically where they were going to move into Iraq from. So we were doing troop escorts all around Kuwait with a map and a compass before Blue Force trackers were in reserve vehicles. Like I'm literally, I don't know what I'm doing, standing on top of the Humvee trying to get a signal not a signal, but the compass to read because of the metal and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure it all out there and doing my best.
Land nav and basic training wasn't enough training for you.
Quite make me comfortable, but I was still one of the better ones. And so I was trying to figure it out. But I do remember stressing out, couldn't find my route in the middle of the desert with a compass. And we're like, why won't it read? And we're like standing up on different hilltops to try to get the true direction. And that was stressful in its own way because we're not even in combat yet. And I'm just trying to figure out how to like maneuver out there. So I remember taking everything from that day that I was uncomfortable there very seriously. I have a map. I should pull it out. I've got a map bag here in my office, and I've got the maps with the routes for MSR Tampa. And I remember laying it out in our little tent floor and putting the overlay on and doing all of our stuff and just getting ready. And I'm like, I cannot not know what I'm doing because I was the driver of my team. And I'm like, I have to know what I'm doing as we go through. So this is before the war starts. We're taking troops to all the different bases like Udari, and I don't know if you've spent much time in Kuwait, but kind of getting troops to staging areas. And then Saddam decides to be the jerk that he is, and he's like, let me threaten chemical attacks. And so he's threatening to chemically attack every unit that is anything south of Baghdad. He's threatening on attacking us. And so he starts shooting Scuds, like legitimately shooting Scuds. And then we would fire the Patriot missiles off and they would do their thing. And every time that happened, we'd have to put our gas masks on and run to a bunker. So that was my first war is like, holy shit, we're going to be putting on our gas masks and running to that bunker. And that little Connex with some sandbags around it's going to save my life if a Scud hits us, and then chemical threats. So it's pretty stressful at first. And then that you go through 48 hours of that every so often, and you're running to the bunker and you're just over it. And we had a point and we're like, we're just walking to the bunker, which is bad. It's complacent. But I still have one of our funniest memories was there was a mortuary affairs unit that came in and they were brand new. Like we'd been there, when you're there like 2 days when something's new, it feels like you've been there 2 years, like we're the experts. we'd been there 2 days, and mortuary affairs come in and scuttle alerts go off, and we're walking, and they're standing in the connex like, you can make it, like telling us to run to the connex. You kind of had to be there, but that has become one of our stories with the tough guys where we always laugh because it's 20 years later and we're like, you can make it. I don't know. You know how you have your own language in the military. So that was before the war started. We push towards the berm, and we were on the little border of Iraq and Kuwait. And we go into Iraq. We were the first military police company into Iraq at Safwan, and kind of scoping out the day. And then we pull back into Kuwait for that night, the very first full night of the war. And we make a 360-degree perimeter security. And I'll send you a picture of this, but I've got a photo from that night, and you can see the pipeline fires and some of the bombs in the distance through NVGs. But you can also see our security halt. So you've got all your trucks, and we had a rotation of the gunner, somebody on the cot sleeping, and then somebody manning the radio. So all night long we were rotating. And we had one of my best friends from the tough guys was on the other side of the berm, and she was with a British element that had been downed, and they were very unstable inside of Iraq, and they could not make communications with their higher element. And so we left MPs with them to help secure them. They're on this side they're in Iraq on this side. We're on the other side in Kuwait, and we're manning the radio in case they need us to go in. And all night long, there's gunfire and bombs in the distance, just kind of this eerie, there's nothing in the world I've ever experienced like that night. So interesting. But that was kind of my first war experience. Was when I think of war, I think of the putting on our gas mask and running to the bunkers. And then I think of that first night. And then everything else, I would imagine, feels similar to your deployment there, where you're on patrols or you're doing escorts or whatever, and you're interacting with people, and every city has a different vibe. So I would imagine you've had some other things that were completely felt the same, but that was probably the most unique experience that I've had.
Yeah. And like literally you're on the front line, and as a woman who's not supposed to be in combat, that's cool. Like making things that shouldn't be normal that feel normal is what I think of when you say, by day 2, we were just over it and we're just gonna walk back. So there's 2 things I think of with my deployment, and that was one of the first nights that we basically moved into Abu Ghraib. We slept in one of the alleyways between 2 of the cells, and I wrote about it in my journal. I don't remember doing it, but I wrote about it in my journal, so I can only believe the 19-year-old version of myself. And that I was so annoyed. I was annoyed by the gunfire, and all I wanted to do was sleep. So I put in my earplugs, which is probably the only time I've ever put in earplugs so that I could sleep. And I look back at that and I'm like, God, you're so lucky that shit didn't go down and things didn't get whack, and you were 10 seconds behind because you chose to put earplugs in. It could have ended really badly, but no one knew we were there yet because we like snuck in the night and just lined up in a alleyway and crashed for the evening. I don't even know if we had anyone on guard. It was so weird. We were part of the advanced party. I think about all of that. I'm like, so many things went wrong, or we did that shouldn't have like, I don't know how we all made it home. I don't, but
no, me neither. So we have this, again, our own language, the tough guys. One of my buddies so we were here, we had the unit in Iraq, we had us that was on the berm, and then we had a headquarters platoon like a little bit south, but we weren't communicating well. You're talking really poor, no antennas up. We're operating in a very small radius of communication at that point. And so this element back here, my battle buddy, one of my very best friends, she was in my wedding. She's sitting there with a Mark 19 all night, like, what's that moving? She's looking at us. She was ready to double finger, butterfinger, thumb it, and just blow us up. So all night long, we're looking in there, and I'm like, I'm pointing into Iraq. She's pointing directly at us with high explosive rounds, and she's just ready to we always smoke them, like really just humor that we should not have, because it's just, how do you make it through it, and how do we not screw up somehow? And so
I mean, when you think about it, they put a bunch of kids with a bunch of high explosives and
kids, bad combo, high explosives, and fear of the first night of the war, and
half-assed equipment because you're getting shit from 1992, And
80, my Humvee was from 1987.
Did you have up armored Humvees?
No. Armor was taking the flak vest that was the old flak vest that gave me like ringworm on my neck.
Yes.
On our door. And then when we got the new flak vest, that was our up armor.
Yeah. Yeah. We had our mechanic that went over with us. Like, I guess he brought like a mini welder, but welded some makeshift like tripod to put on the back of one of our Humvees to give us the kind of like turret effect, but without the turret. It's just like, yeah, we were definitely under, it was.
We had a turret, thankfully. I was a gunner for half of my deployment. So I was a driver until my gunner broke his hand, and then I was the gunner. And we
just had like old school, regular old soft.
We didn't have up armor, but there was metal there. It was about this thin, but there was metal.
Yeah. We took the doors off, hung out the sides because, doors just get in your way anyway, and it's not really going to stop around. So
I actually think when people like y'all pass us, I'm like, why do we have to have doors? It's so hot in here.
Right. So. I do remember I almost fell out of a Humvee going down the interstate one time because I was so freaking tired, and I'm sitting there like, and supposed to be watching, but I like, get odds and like got one like jolted, and I about fell out of the damn Humvee.
Yeah. I've got a jolt story for you. I even in combat try to be a really good human, and I love people. I don't care if you're the bad guy or the good guy or whatever. We're going to try to be really good to people. Like that's one of my values. But in the gunner, you've got to be, hard target and all those things. And I remember being in the turret, and it was just 12 hours of nothing. Like we were doing a convoy escort in the middle of nowhere, and that heat just hits you and you just start getting sleepy, and I'm dipping, and all of a sudden I'm like trying to stay awake, and then I catch a car that I didn't realize was there last minute. Is completely unacceptable, right? Like, why are we doing these things? And he's driving up, and I grab that little handle and I swing around, and I just muzzle down on the car. And I'm not going to shoot. Like I just, like I went from sleepy mode to like, and they looked at me like I was about to shoot. And I felt so bad. Like it's one of those things.
Jesus out of them.
I scared them to death. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm in the gun. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Just because
it's been 37 hours since I slept, and
I'm telling you,
30 minutes.
It's one thing to be to be strong and have weapons and do the job if something happens, right? But it's another thing to just like be an asshole for no reason. And so even over there, I'm like, I can wave and be kind to people. If they're not doing anything to me, I can be kind to them. And so that interaction went against like my core of like who I am. And so I was just like, I'm so sorry. And they're like, it's okay. And that just followed me like, keep your butt awake. You have a gun. You need to be good.
It's not like you weren't trying.
Oh, no, I was trying.
Who knows how many hours at that point you'd been awake with minimal sleep and minimal nutrition. And
yeah. But still, I think it's important that I care how that interaction goes. Some people are like, man, like, no, those are humans. It's okay to care about that. But
right. So you said you moved around 12 times. Is that correct?
Yeah.
13 times. What was the primary mission? Were you guys primarily doing convoy security?
We were multi-purpose for real. They say that about MPs. So we did convoy security for almost 80%. We did base security briefly. They sent us back to Kuwait for like 3 weeks, and we did base security a very short time. We did patrols like we would do in Safwan. We were doing basically MSR patrols to keep on MSR patrol in Safwan, right at the very beginning of the war, there was a group of kids, and they're like, Kumbala, Kumbala. And we go over to the side of the road, and they had like 8 Milan missiles dug into the side of the road and ready to attack convoys. So they started realizing that our patrol presence there was kind of needed to keep the MSR free flowing. So it teeter-tottered, right? You might be convoy security, and then while you're doing that, you realize like, hey, we need to do more proactive things and patrol this area and patrol this route. So it just bounced around.
And then tell me what it was like to be there when they found Saddam.
So we had a guy named Westside. Everybody's got a guy somewhere that's like, they want to speak American things, and he'd always come up to the convoys and be like, Westside. So our 3rd platoon worked goodness gracious, I'm getting too far removed. They worked a checkpoint, but we called it something. But they worked a checkpoint, and Westside was hanging out there one day, and he's like, give me the phone. I want to call the president. He would speak really broken English, but he was basically saying, phone president. And he wanted to get on our mic looked like a phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I know where Saddam is. I know where Saddam is. And he keeps telling them, West Side, what, this, they're like, West Side, you don't know where Saddam is. He's like, Saddam is in a hole into Crit. Saddam is in a hole into Crit. And he keeps like yelling at them. And they're like, West Side, we're trying to do operations. Get out of here. But he was friends with him. He keeps coming at him. Saddam is in a hole into Crit. And they're like, West Side, you do not know where Saddam is. And we're not into Crit at the time. We're down in Nasiriyah. And they're just like, get out of here, West Side. And they blow him off. Like, it was like 3 weeks later, they found Saddam in a hole in Tikrit. So that's one of my favorite stories about. It wasn't me, but that was one of my best friends. Again, we have our own language, and I'll be like, Saddam is in a hole in Tikrit, So
wow, you guys had valuable intel 3 weeks later.
And just blew it off like he was just goofy West Side.
It's hard to know what is good intel and what's not, though, with some of those guys.
So it was cool right after that were the people that would march through the streets and they wanted Saddam's head. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember watching it on TV. I was home at that point.
Driving down the road and they had these flags. I've got to find this picture. It's really gruesome, but there's these people walking down the road with this massive flag and it's literally just Saddam's head chopped off with blood dripping down it. And I was like, they hated him,
Yeah.
So that was, we go through all these things with combat and people are like, you shouldn't have been there. You should have. But what I experienced, especially in Southern Iraq, was that there were a lot of people that felt super oppressed. They felt like it was horrible for them under his regime. They did not want him there. And at least during that time, I felt like we're helping these people, and I know you could debate all the stuff about that war, but I just feel like those people really wanted and needed help, and him being gone was a good thing. So.
Yeah. So you went home shortly after that?
We went home. I don't remember what month that was. My timeline is off.
It's okay.
Shortly after, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It was. I remember that being at the latter part of our deployment, but we got home March 4th, 2004.
And then you've shared with me a little, but let's kind of talk about some of, we'll call it what it is, right? Challenges of that adjustment period, coming back after a year being in a combat zone and dealing and seeing and witnessing some very gruesome things and some very scary things and being on high alert all the time and, sleep deprivation and nutrition isn't the best and things. And then you're home and your family's happy to see you and your friends are happy to see you, but Brooke is not the same Brooke she was before she left.
Yeah. There's a lot to that. That's a heavy, long topic, but let me hit the positive and then I'll hit the hard. Basketball's always been a really important thing for me. And I came back and I was looking forward to playing basketball again in college, and getting into UT Dallas and playing there was kind of my thing that always kept me from going too far, to the dark side or anything. I always had that to look forward to. And I worry about people that don't have that thing that they're passionate about, that don't have that thing to look forward to, and they're just spinning their wheels when they come home. I think that was my thing. And I'm thankful for that thing. Even if it was good or bad in certain days, that was my thing. So the challenge was being so vigilant and then coming home and it's just normal. I did not recognize that I had PTSD until I was teaching psychology 10 years later. I threw up every day around 10 a.m. almost every single day for about a year, just out of straight decompression of stress and just dumping, adrenaline dumping or whatever you want to call it. But when I was teaching psychology, this was many years removed, and I'm reading through fight or flight and how we know this, but your blood pumps to your extremities to literally fight or flight. And a lot of times when you come out of that, you'll be nauseous because your blood is literally left your core. And so you go into straight nausea, and that's where a lot of people get nauseous. And I didn't recognize that. I just thought I was weird. Didn't want to talk about that. I didn't know what to consider it, but I had that really heavy for a long time. I just remember getting up, and it was almost like, it was at 10-ish, but it was also when I was on a normal day and I was getting ready for my day. It was like, I'd just throw up in the bathroom before I left for the day. I don't think I really recognized that it was so much military related until I went to Hurricane Katrina. And because I had that every day for a year, and then I kind of got better, and then I was feeling better. And then all of a sudden I remember putting my duffel bag and walking to my truck to leave for Hurricane Katrina and thinking, I hope, you had you had stories of looters and like violence happening even in our own country. And we didn't know what we were about to walk into. And, you know, we knew people were breaking into our military armory and trying to steal automatic weapons. And I'm going down there to get those out. And I'm like, I just walked to my truck and just threw up in the middle of the street. And I was like, oh, this is all tied in, but I still didn't say PTSD, you know, it was more like, oh, that's not normal. So that vigilance and not knowing how to not trauma dump, adrenaline dump, maybe stress dump. That was unique for me. Definitely had some road ragey moments because when I was a driver or a gunner, like I said, they're not supposed to be by you on the road, right? And that is not I already told you I'm kind. It has nothing to do with kindness. It's a safety thing, safety and security. So on the road, all of a sudden I'm, you know, and I'm by myself and it just didn't feel good. I dealt with lots of those. I worked at a horse track and remember working our first 4th of July event and I'm running to a car. I knew fireworks were going to happen that night, but I'm running to a car and first one goes off and I just start like, I'm just in a different place. And I still did my job, but my head and my adrenaline and everything else, while everybody else is just enjoying 4th of July, getting cars because I was doing valet, they're normal. And I'm like, I'm at war because the first night of the war, I'm sitting there and that is what it happened. You know, I've never looked at fireworks the same, although I've gone a long way from where I was that night. And I enjoy them, but I didn't enjoy them that night. It was all of a sudden like, I'm running in the middle of the dark with stuff popping off over my head. And so I navigated that, you know, just not expecting to. Those are things, the normal that shouldn't be normal, right? It's like, you shouldn't freak out at a firework. And I wasn't like dropping, but it dramatically changed my presence.
Yeah. For me, it puts me on edge and I'm not clear in my head. It's more confusion. It still bothers me. And it's not, okay, hey, it's 4th of July and we're going to light off fireworks. It's the 2 weeks leading up to 4th of July where the asshole kids are blowing them off at 9:30 at night when I'm crawling in bed and I don't expect it.
Yeah.
Me into a flurry. But as much as I've tried to prepare myself for it, it's still something. And for me, it's not the firework itself, it's the larger ones that make that thump. I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was the mortars. We were mortared every night for like 28 days straight. And we were like sitting ducks and we couldn't really do anything until finally we had an armor unit come and light them up. And that was like a 4th of July on a 4th of July that I will never forget. Because finally could retaliate, or I shouldn't say retaliate. We could protect ourselves.
Yeah. That's what it is.
But yeah, those thumps are what get me. I'm just like, can we just take all the thumps and never hear the thumps again?
Yeah.
So basketball, that's amazing. I don't think I really had anything initially. And so I felt lost, quite frankly. And so, it's 2004. I ended up in a really bad relationship. We won't go into that, but it was just, anyone who wanted to love me at that point, I wanted to just feel that. And I ended up pregnant that summer, which I didn't find out until like October. But anyway, long story short, that was like, for me, my saving grace. I had another human to care for and that I was responsible for. And it was like, all right, Dallas, you need to get your shit together. You need to figure it out and just do what you need to do because now you're responsible for this other human. Yeah. And so I hear a lot of times veterans getting lost because they don't have that mission-driven purpose anymore. I feel like becoming a mom, even though it wasn't the fulfillment I've been chasing all my life. Well, I should say it wasn't the fulfillment that I was chasing in between 2004 and probably last year, but it was enough to keep me going, even though I've hit some pretty low spaces in the last 5 years or so. But yeah, I think we've all got to find something.
Yeah, for sure. Purpose with anybody, not just veterans, but
right.
Sure. Gets you through.
Do you feel like, though, with veterans, because I was trying to explain this to someone the other day, we're given such this high responsibility, we're protectors of our country. We are off on this pristine mission that's above all other missions. And then we come home and it's almost like we're having this sense of like settling.
Yeah, I kind of struggled with that. And that would lead me to some very reckless things where I was trying to help places I should not be helping. I remember running into a gas station that was getting ransacked, and I'm like, I feel like they're going to try to kill the cashier in there. And so I run in, and while it was probably just a beer run, but it did not look like that was what was going on. And they were essentially robbing the store, and I'm running in with no weapons in the middle of by myself, like super reckless and really no plan. And no, it's not really heroic because I wouldn't have been able to do much good, if that makes sense. But I think when you have a mission and you feel like you're helping people and you're serving the good, you're trying to serve good, and then you come home and you're just like looking, and so I'm not saying I wouldn't do it still, but I'm saying it was pretty reckless.
You're looking for this above and beyond kind of mission to help people. I've also noticed like most veterans who have their shit together, and that's like an overarching, like they've worked through some of their shit, right? They're either in or well through their healing journey on some level, find themselves in a space where they are helping other people. It's not, it's not like, oh, well, I came back and I'm good. And I was, a combat engineer, and now I just, work at the oil field and I'm good. Like most veterans, especially that served in combat, don't end up in a field that's outside of helping people.
Yeah. I personally believe that a life that's not in service to others is not really worth living. And I think that people that join to serve have that in them, a little bit of that probably innately.
Yeah, even like subconsciously before they really even knew that that's what they were a part of.
And then to be in it, it only deepens it, I would imagine. And I just personally don't think there's much fulfillment without service to others. And so.
Well, that wasn't all that the military had for you, right? They pulled some other things out of the back pocket and threw it your way.
Yeah. So 2008, I was supposed to deploy on my second deployment, and I went to Arabic school to prep up. And so I was going to Arabic school for, I think we went 6 weeks. It might have been 5, but 8 hours a day of Arabic class, trying to learn how to speak the language even better to ramp up to be there in the push in 2008, 2009. And then my back was like, you are jacked up. There's a really long story there, but I hurt my back. And during a PT test, I had this pain radiating down my leg. And the next day I could barely tie my boots. And fast forward, my unit deploys without me, and I had to have back surgery at 25 years old. But that surgery was probably the best thing I could have done. That year prior, dealing with it was just I really struggled as a soldier. I really struggled in general because it was just took me out of being able to do my job and be able to do much. So they deployed without me, and then I got a phone call. So they deployed in August, and I got a phone call in November from my battalion saying, we know you just got cleared. Are you interested in going with us? And I wanted to go with my unit. I was a squad leader. It broke my heart. I mean, beyond what I can imagine, I was distressed that I did not deploy in 2008 with my unit as a squad leader. And I thought it was the worst thing in the world that would ever happen to me. And then I ended up deploying with my battalion. And during that time, you were in a line unit. So you probably know, like, you hate the thought of going from being a squad leader and like being boots on ground to being like the office person, And so I was a battle desk. I was an operations sergeant, but I was the battle desk NCO for a battalion that was over 9 military police companies doing the Iraqi police training and all that stuff. And so it's called the police primacy mission. And so I was over that, but during that time, what it allowed me to do was get my master's degree, also learn really the hierarchy and different structures within the military. So I had a whole different lens, and I got to learn at the battalion level, but I just always wanted to be with my people. So this was 2009. I got to go. They had a spot open up. The timing all worked out where I ended up there anyways. But that was also the first year that we lost a soldier in our battalion, and that soldier was attached to my company that I was with. And so I was supposed to be in Mosul as a squad leader, and Lieutenant Emmert was there attached to them. And I was at the battalion, and I got the first phone call when he was shot and taken to the hospital. So that was a very hard year. Kind of circle around this a little bit, but it was hard going home from that and really questioning my leadership because I wasn't there. And it created stories that aren't real. And I can see that in this space, but I couldn't see that in that space. So should have been there in my head, could have helped, could have, and then I get to see the operational side of where did it go wrong? And you talked about not having security element one night, or, we should have had a security element. And there's all these shouldas, couldas, wouldas in combat and really in life. And I let those really creep in my head. And I was convinced by the time I came home that if Lieutenant Emmert, if I was there, if I hadn't have had back surgery and I was there somehow, he wouldn't have died, which is not only arrogant, but it's ridiculous. But it's a false story that you can create. And it was not intentional, but it starts to creep in your head. And it all of a sudden, it's years later and I'm like not feeling like a good leader. And I always would have like, I could have saved lives, and he was the first of 4 that year. And the responsibility of, seeing the stories and reporting, but also I called my unit and I'm like, somebody's shot in Mosul. Who is it? I'm thinking it's one of my best friends. Those are people I'd been in the unit with for 8 years. And I don't know if I'm going to get emotional telling this, but because I've shared this before, but when I called and it wasn't one of my friends, I went from like, my body was frozen and I thought I was just going to completely I literally couldn't move, to my friend Sergeant Johnson saying, it's not ours, it's Lieutenant Emmert, and I didn't know him. And I was relieved a little bit that it wasn't one of my best friends. So then I carried a weight of guilt for feeling relief when this man was a great leader and everybody that knows him loved him. So there was a whole lot of elements of like heavy coming home from that one, that they're heavy, but it was like me, like it was my thoughts that made it heavy. And I think that sometimes in life, we need to pay attention to how we think about things and be kind to ourselves. If we flipped roles and you told me that story, I wouldn't think that Lieutenant Emmert would have been alive if you were there. But yet I say that to myself, so you kind of have to flip your roles on how you think about things and challenge what you allow into your head and then choose thoughts that serve you and give yourself grace, on little things. But I don't always like sharing that story because it doesn't necessarily make sense to people that haven't lived it. And it's like, how do you think that you did that? But I don't know how I got there. And so I came home from that one and I was not suicidal my first deployment, but when I came home from that second deployment, I actually put a pistol in my mouth just to see if I could figure out if I wanted to do it, how would I do it? And what's wild was 2003, there was so much more death. I mean, you saw the things we saw. I mean, there's so much more death. And then in 2009, I felt like somehow related in my own brain. I convinced myself that it was me involved and I just took it to a different place. It was really dark. So I think learning through that, how much my thoughts impacted my feelings about myself, which impacted my actions that I was starting to play with. I think it's important to recognize that. And I'm really thankful to be through that. And I can really recognize that earlier. I mean, it doesn't stop me from thinking things like you have negative thoughts bounce in, but you have to really take time to reflect and grow through that and challenge what you think. Just because your thoughts are there, don't make them real. And that's something that I've learned the hard lesson on that I'm thankful that I have.
How did you get through that? How did you learn the lesson? What helped you accept and understand what was going on in your head wasn't reality and that you weren't responsible for that death? And you may or may not, because you'll never know, could have had any impact on whether or not he made it.
A lot of growth. I appreciate growth books and growth podcasts. And one of my favorite authors is John Gordon. And he had a book called The Energy Bus. And it seems really cheesy. It seems like a kid's story, but it's super impactful. And it really challenges you to think about your own energy and the way that you look at things. And I remember reading that book and I was just struggling through it. I tried and I used it. I think that's important that you try even when you struggle. And I was just like, I gotta try something. And I was just moving my body, very terrible workouts, but I was trying to just move. I remember working out and audiobook listening to The Energy Bus. And that wasn't the only thing, but I remember those intentional steps of trying to work out and trying to grow mentally and put good substance in my brain, allowed me to take steps forward. And I started to day by day feel a little bit better. And then every time I grab something, every time I talk to somebody that's, lived something that's been challenging and I gain wisdom from them, I take those as little seeds and I try to plant them. versus letting the bad stuff that's there overgrow. So you pull the bad weeds out and you plant a good seed. And so it's literally, I know some people expect it to happen overnight and they want this like program, like this thing, but I really think it's intentional habits. And you don't always see that when you're in it. It's just like trying to just move forward one step and then believing that miracles can be made in steps. Mm-hmm. So one little baby step can lead to a miracle. And you don't know how far you can go if you just continue to take one baby step at a time. And sometimes that baby step is hard. And sometimes that baby step is just simply like, let's say you're just in a dark place and you don't feel like cleaning your house and you're looking around, you're like, I'm just in shit. Like, just put the dishes in the dishwasher and don't even clean them before you put them in there. And then just wash it twice. Like, do something. I know it seems silly, like, but don't give yourself grace that you're not always having to be your best. And just try to find a way to do something better than you did the day before, even if it's at the smallest step you can imagine. If you take enough small steps, you're going to start getting momentum. I really believe that momentum is gained in how you've shown up in the past 72 hours. So if you like take a step today and then you wake up and take 2 steps tomorrow and then 3 steps the next day, you'll start to find yourself like all of a sudden on day 4, you're like, I'm a badass. Like maybe not quite like that, but like, hey, look what I'm doing, because you're doing it, not just did it one time.
Yeah. Was there something, or was it the pistol incident that was kind of like an eye opener? Or was there something that happened after that said, Brooke, like, this is bad, get your shit together?
No. And that pistol incident was one of many throughout the years. I would drive to work for years and I drove over this bridge and I would have suicidal ideation of like, I could just work, and that was just present for a long time. I can't remember the last time I've had a thought like that, but I had them for so many years. But I always had enough good things. I always had enough purpose. So I had this darkness, but I always had enough purpose to like just show up for them. Kind of like your son, probably, like just show up for him. And so I would have that with different kids in my program, different family members, every year it's looked different on who I felt like I needed to show up for. But what's wild is at some point in my life, I started showing up for me. And I don't know when that was. And I think I just got emotional because I just recognized that.
I just got goosebumps all over me.
But it started with just do a little bit better, and yeah, for real, I'd like to figure out why or how that transitioned, but at some point I started showing up for me.
Yeah. God, that's deep. I'm just like sitting in that for a moment, because you're right. Showing up for other people is honestly only going to take you so far. But when you show up for yourself, that's really where the healing happens.
Yeah.
Wow. I think I just want to like sidebar and speak to anyone who's listening to this, because this is some deep shit. And this is why it's important to check in on your battle buddies this isn't just military people. This isn't just military talk. This is just people, if they pop in your head and they are on your heart or on your mind, call them, text them, something, because sometimes it's that person reaching out that can make you feel like, oh, well, I better show up for them because they checked on me. And so you never know the impact that you can have on a person by just saying, hey, I was thinking about you. I hope you're great. We should grab coffee soon sometime, or let's jump on a Zoom and chat, and anything like that. So it's very important, but also, showing up for yourself. Wow. That's like, I'm on a whole nother sorry, what were we talking about?
Being shit shows and then learning how to show up for yourself over time.
Yeah. Wow. So that's 2009, 2010. You're trying to just figure shit out.
Came home. I got my first head coaching job in basketball and I'm in Texas. Sports are a really big thing here, and in our high schools we've got like 1A through 6A. And so I got a 6A basketball job, and it was at my alma mater. It's really my dream job. And I got that when I got home in 2010. And so I came home, I coached for a little bit, and then that spring I applied for that. I got my master's degree that year. And so then I transitioned into, I have my dream job and I'm a complete mess. So it's weird how you have like the best of things and then I'm just a mess, and I'm trying to like merge them. And this was so good that it helped me really get through. But it helped me get through without having to do much work, because this was so encouraging and positive and fun. And I don't think it was until I had some struggles in the civilian world with some friends dying and of cancer and things like that. And watching some kids lose parents in my program. And then all of a sudden I was like, what am I doing? Like I was really probably at some of my lowest point then. And oddly, I was getting ready to, was kind of going through it for a couple years, and then I was getting ready to deploy again. And I was supposed to go to Gitmo. And then so I was getting excited because I went from the battalion and I was in a platoon. And I was a platoon sergeant. So I kind of have this new life in the Army, getting me through a rough time. Supposed to go to Gitmo. We get off ramped and we end up going back to the Middle East. And I was a platoon sergeant in 6 countries doing the customs mission. And so not what I think of as fun, but very cool. I got to go to Jordan. I got to go to Bahrain. I got to go to UAE. I got to really explore, got to go to Iraq and fly in a helicopter to where Saddam's trial was and where he was hung. And I'm like, this is like history, like all of this crazy history that I've lived. I get to kind of full circle it. During that time, I just explored a lot and took care of my troops. But that was 2017, 2018. And then I came home and got married in 2019. And so I've just kind of kept hitting this trend of like upward trend in my life, and been really supported at home. And I just feel like I have the most healthy balance now. But I came out of that dark, and I really think that deployment helped set me up to get out of it. It's weird, but being in a position where you're over people and you got to take care of them, again, you're serving them, and it kind of gets you out of your funk. And then it allowed me to transition into like, you're running every day, like you're eating well, you're taking care of your soldiers, you're checking on them. And then I had momentum for the first time in my life after navigating the hard of 2009. So I think I did just more healing than you can imagine in that transition. Kind of all over there, but
yeah.
My journey.
You were interesting enough, but I can't help but see the parallel of you're in this parental type of role, because being in leadership in the military is very much like a parental role. Whereas, in like corporate America, a leadership position, yes, you are managing individuals, but a lot of times they're in your generation. Whereas when you're in a leadership position in the military, you are literally looking after kids.
yeah.
Like you got
18-year-olds.
18, 19, 20-year-olds running around.
Yeah.
You're an age of where, you could be, a very young mother, but you're still like in this mother type of mentality age range.
Yeah.
And you have all these little teenagers running around bebopping. Yes, you have, a sense of responsibility as a leader, but I can't help but feel like there's such a parallel of, well, I'm kind of also their mother figure in this role because their moms aren't here.
Yeah.
I'm here. It's my responsibility. And no one wants to be the one to call the mom to give them any bad news. So you're damn sure going to take care of their kids, right? And then like that has me reflecting on probably why, and he's still always going to be my first sergeant to me, but he, went all the way up the ranks to E9. And he still every year calls me on my birthday, calls me at Christmas, Happy Mother's Day. He was there when I got the first ultrasound of my oldest kid. Like he
Awesome.
Really was. And my dad has, been in and out of my life my whole life, but like he really was that father figure, but also my highest military NCO throughout my career. And that's such a special role to be in.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so cool. 3 deployments, all this craziness. You come back, you're married, you're happy, everything's going on, and then life hits you with another one.
Yeah. So I waited a little too long. The lesson is when your spouse says, get that checked. So I let my a skin spot on my calf go a little too long. And before I knew it, I was getting diagnosed with melanoma. So I currently have stage 3 melanoma, and I am attacking that this year. So we went from initial diagnosis in May, surgery for removal, and then a lymph node removal to check the lymph nodes in June. And then my port, I'm going to show you on here, Harry Porter.
Harry Porter.
Yeah. Harry Porter got him put in, and that was think that was the first week of July. I'm not quite sure. Really busy. And I think I shared with you that I just checked all my boxes. I'd never done a VA claim until melanoma, and it's a presumptive condition under the PACT Act. So that's one of those things that, I was around just like you. We were over there, so we were exposed to different toxic things and different things. And so if you have melanoma, it's just assumed to be service related. So I finally went and I checked all the VA boxes of all the things that like my back surgery. I hadn't even filed my back, and I got literal back surgery during my time in the military. So I had to go through and file all those. And it's been a whirlwind that I went to my medical and then behavioral health. I was finally like PTSD. Oh yeah, I diagnosed myself with that. And, so I had to go through that this summer, and I'm still kind of navigating that process, but I am now having treatment. I have my 4th treatment tomorrow. So I do treatment every 3 weeks, and I am very thankful for the research and the progress that they have done with this. So back in the day, melanoma used to be only surgical and chemo, and that would really mess with people. And right now I'm on what's called immunotherapy. So as long as my therapy works, it is not as harsh as chemo. I've experienced some fatigue, and I'm sure I'll have some little things here and there, but it's completely manageable. My work is super supportive, and it's been, I say, it's weird to say it's been a good journey, but it's been a good journey. I definitely am thankful for catching it when we caught it, so that I didn't have to go straight chemo, and I can combat it with immunotherapy. So yeah, it's quite a journey, but there we are.
Yeah, well, I know you can get through it, and all those out there, send all the positive vibes and prayers her way, and I'll continue to root for you. It's crazy what life brings you, especially when you're like, okay, I'm good. Like I've worked through this, that, and the other. You ended up you retiring, right?
Yes.
From the military, retired from the military, married, good job, just everything. And then, just another ball thrown at you. But
Yeah.
you'll get through it. Retired as an I'm looking behind you as an E7.
E7, yeah.
And
my ego struggled with that. I only wanted to stay in at the end because I always wanted to be a sergeant major, but I never wanted, once I got promoted to my current job, I'm an athletic coordinator. It's literally a dream job. And it's like, do you really want to go away to MLC? Do you want to go to Sergeant Major Academy? And I just hit a point where if you're looking at life like a teeter-totter, like, do I want to give time to this? It's not a balance. You got to find time, and you can only give military and civilian so much. And so I just hit a point where I'm like, if I'm doing this just for ego and rank, and to say that I retired as this, and not because I feel like it's where I need to be, then it's time to go.
Yeah.
But I'm grumpy because I think I would have been a really good first sergeant and sergeant major. But you have to make choices in life.
Yeah.
And that was my choice. And I don't look back on the choice because I love running my campus and working with coaches and kids. And I'm working on my doctorate right now. And so I'm still trying to pour in. I'm working on my doctorate in something that I'm still really early. So I haven't chosen my dissertation question, but I think it's going to be really shaped by the military, but it's going to serve coaches, which is kind of my sweet spot for like why, I am out of the military, but navigating trauma and grief and then still running a mission. You're in the fight and you've still got a small element to face. I think coaches do that all the time. I mean, I've had things in North Texas where we're having kids murdered in the street, and I'm consoling a kid in the hallway, and then we're playing a basketball game the very next night. Like it's real at a level that people don't think that coaches are navigating things like soldiers in combat, but we do. And there's no conversation for them. Yeah. And there's no resources for them. And there's no conversation about just like, what does this feel like? What does it look like? What does the formal and informal need to look like? What can we learn from others? So there's a space to explore that I'm going to be exploring at Creighton University right now. And I hope that in 2.5 years hopefully 2.5 years that I'm done with that. And I have something that the military heavily shaped, but that serves our communities and coaches. So
that is so exciting. I love that. You're going to bring so much to the table, and that is incredible. That's incredible.
Thank you. I want to be cool like you and get on a TED Talk when I have
yes. I'll help you in any way, shape I can.
Okay, let
That
me
was
do
wild. I mean, there's not much anything cooler than like Sergeant Major Brittain, but also like Dr. Brittain. Like, are you kidding me? Like, come on.
I'm like, if I can't be a sergeant major, I'll be a doctor.
Right. Okay, I'll trade this in for that. I mean, that's gonna be badass. I will have to come down. My oldest is in Houston, so I'll have to come down and celebrate with you in a couple. God, that would be amazing. I need to come visit. Period.
Yeah.
I would love that.
The house is always open.
Consider it done. I will start making arrangements. All right. Well, I am going to leave the end of the podcast in your hands. And I just like to, and I've kind of given you some brainstorming around this. But, if another female veteran was here or another, 18-year-old was getting ready to go into the military, pick your audience. But what would you leave them with? What would you want to share with that woman?
First of all, I'd say do it. I just loved it. I think it shaped who I am in so many ways. The good and the bad, there's hard days, there's hard things, but when you choose the right lens and how you look at them, you can really grow so much from that community and from the military. I've taken discipline, perspective. I think the way that I look at life after combat, I know for a while it challenged me because I felt so alone. I felt like people didn't view the world like that. And then I started to realize like, this is a really beautiful thing to have as a 21-year-old, to have such appreciation for our country and our blessings, and all those things. And just what a cool way to explore the world and grow and expand your capacity and, like build confidence in the things that you have. And so, yeah, my main stuff would be do it. And then as you do it and you navigate struggle, what I told y'all I learned the hard way is challenge your thoughts. They're not always real. And if you're anyone in the military that's struggling, just because you think it does not mean it's fact. And you can dissect those you can dissect those thoughts, and you can choose things that serve you, and you can choose to reframe things, and it's hard work, but it is a choice.
Such wisdom. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being vulnerable today. Thank you for going over almost over 20 years worth of memory lane. And I feel like we've only scratched the surface, right? We could have done a whole podcast just on basic training in AIT. How fun would it be to get like a handful of us together and get
so
on
fun.
a big one? So we're going to have to find some of the gals.
I'm actually scared about what would come out.
But thank you sincerely. I appreciate it so much. And if there's anything that the platform can do for you along the way, you just reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. I am so proud of you. Keep doing the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Be sure to subscribe for more episodes of the Not So Average Jane podcast.